Radiant and Resilient is about mindset and faith to break paradigms and overcome challenges in our life. Because when the mind, body, and spirit are aligned, we literally radiate from the inside out. I'm Kay Vasquez. Let's dive in. In this episode, I want to share a client story with you. So, when I was a functional medicine practitioner, this client came to me initially because she was experiencing gut issues and sinus infections, like recurring sinus infections. And through functional medicine, we did a lot of work. We uncovered a lot of things. I helped her heal her gut by removing inflammatory foods, putting on her gut supplement protocol. And so gut-wise, she felt better, didn't have constipation anymore. And then with the sinus issues, we uncovered that she was being exposed to mold in her home. And it was wild because when they went in to do the testing and discover where the mold was, it was in her bathroom that had seeped through the wall on her side of the room in their bedroom. And so I remember her showing me pictures when they were going through the renovations of how they just took out a chunk of that wall where the mold was. Because the thing with mold is that we may not always see it and smell it because it's really good at getting in behind the drywall. It can get in behind baseboards, under flooring. Like it's in places that is not seen to the naked eye sometimes. But there are certain people that when they're exposed are really, really sensitive to it. Knowing what I know now, I believe her sensitivity was higher because she was also under a lot of stress during that time. In functional medicine, I learned, okay, yeah, some people have genetic mutations, but the thing with genes, if you have specific genetic mutations that predispose you to like mold illness, for example, we can support our genes. There's something called epigenetics, which are lifestyle, environmental, and I also believe internal factors that can also influence our genes. So just because you have specific genes for like diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, etc., doesn't mean that that is your fate. There are so many things that you can do to prevent those things from happening. And yes, the lifestyle is important. So I always recommend going back to the basics, eating, whole, organic, good quality foods. Like you want food from the ground. You don't want a lot of processed food that is inflammatory, but I'm not going to dive into that here. Because at the end of the day, we want to eat like our ancestors ate, food from the ground and making sure you're getting enough sleep, quality, quantity sleep, reducing our stress. And that's also doing the inner work. We can do all the right things when it comes to our lifestyle, changing what we're eating, exercising, taking supplements, reducing toxins. But it's so important that we do the inner work. And this was the key with this client because while we're working on healing her physical body, she was experiencing a lot of internal stress. With her personal life, she was going through a lot with her kids, who I believe were in middle school and high school at the time. So middle school, high school, rough time, especially for kids these days. I know it was definitely rough for me back in the 90s, but yeah, I can't imagine what kids are going through, just the mental and emotional stress that they're going through. And it's a lot because again, we're not taught how to process our emotions, how to perceive what's happening in our life. We give our power away because of things that people say and things that people do. And we think that we have no control over what's happening in our life. And unfortunately, kids, just don't have the tools. They only do what they know how to do because they saw their parents do the same thing. There's a lot of learned unhealthy patterns and conditioning that kids take on and then project onto other kids. And that's our reality of today's society. That's why there's so many kids that are bullying, that are mean, that are just nasty. And instead of just being loving and kind and, genuinely helping them. And I really believe it's the environment that they're in because kids aren't born that way. they learn through their environment, their parents, and the different people that they're around. So my heart goes out to kids today because they don't have the tools. They're doing the best that they can, but they're dealing with so much internally that they don't know how to process and release everything. And so it starts to impact them and impact, like they start to question who they really are. And it creates a lot of stress within the family. So that's what she was experiencing and going through. And of course, as a mom, you love your kids. You want, to do so much for your kids. You can see what's possible for your kids and want to give them the help that they need. So, they're going through all of them. Her and her husband, the kids, they're all going through therapy, doing everything that they can to help them. But every time we do her cortisol test, she had high cortisol levels. And I recommend different things, put her on adrenal support, different herbs, adaptogens, had her start doing meditations, and she's been doing that. And after a couple years of working with her cortisol continued to come back high. Because again, every time we meet, there was still stress. There was stuff going on with her daughters, and cortisol was not coming back down, no matter what she was doing. Until I created Already Enough. Already Enough is my audio course that dives into the power of the mind, what's going on in our subconscious mind, and how to tune into our body, tune into our emotions, how to regulate the nervous system, how teaches you how to process and release everything that's going within, so you can show up differently. So you can respond and not allow the circumstances that are happening in your life to control you, to affect your physical state. So when she went through Already Enough, shifts started to happen. Now, her cortisol was still high initially, but over time, as she continued doing the deeper inner work, even after Already Enough, we were working in a group together and just continuing to dive deep, continuing to work on these pieces. She finally got to a point where she could surrender. And it was at that time where her girls were getting the help that they needed. They were making shifts in their life as well. So she was making shifts in her life. Things started to change with her daughters. And when we repeated her cortisol finally, it had come down. It was finally within normal limits. It was incredible to see. And I shared this story with you because no matter what you're doing, and I see this a lot, I used to see a lot of clients through functional medicine where they would tell me, I'm not stressed, and they're focusing on changing their diet, taking supplements, exercise, sleep, like yoga, meditation. They think they're doing all the right things to support their physical health. But when it comes to really tuning inward and tapping into the mental and emotional health, some people don't want to go there. But the ones that are open to diving in deeper, to be able to recognize, okay, what are they feeling? And really get to the root of what's going on, which then helps them to see what's going on internally in the subconscious mind, how it's affecting the body physically, how just shifting that creates a shift and change in the body, a shift in our energy, which then affects us physically. And what was interesting is that even though we healed her gut, she would still occasionally have gut issues. And she also noticed she started gaining weight again. And that was because her body was still under a lot of stress. It was mental and emotional stress that she was creating within her. And even though she was meditating every single day, like religiously meditating, it still wasn't enough because she wasn't processing and releasing everything that was happening within. And once she finally did and got to a place of surrender, that's when her body felt safe. That's when her gut started healing. That's when she recognized she needed to nourish her body. She wasn't giving her body the proper foods, which then contributed to weight gain. And shifts started happening physically in her body. And it was just so incredible to see. So if this sounds like you, sounds like you've been on a journey, you've probably gone to Western medicine doctors, you may or may not have seen functional medicine, alternative medicine doctors, and still just aren't feeling physically better with your health, and whether you identify yourself as perfectionist, type A, OCD, I've heard it all, and you don't think you're stressed, but yet maybe there is something going on in your personal life that you haven't processed, you haven't released. Maybe there is some internal stress that you're creating within, because sometimes just trying to get better, heal ourselves, you know, one of the common things that women come to me for is losing weight, but they put so much pressure on themselves to lose weight or to conceive. They come to me for infertility and they put so much pressure on themselves to try to conceive, doing all the right things, that they're still not getting pregnant, they're still not losing weight. And that's because we need to go deeper. We need to go within to make the shifts, to release what we're still holding on to focus on something different that's not putting pressure on ourselves, where our body finally feels safe and shifts can happen. And we can start to lose the weight. We can actually become fertile and conceive without any problems, because it can be done. But are you willing to dive deeper and go within and heal what needs to be healed from within? Because if you are, let's chat. Send me a message on Instagram at the Kate Vasquez, and we'll dive right in.